Vampire in the Beginning, Chapter 1, 2013. Life can be great. It is vital. But life can also be depressing and more often than not miserable and pointless. I think this is true of a human life, perhaps a life that usually spans about 70 years or so. Imagine then, if you will, living for nearly 500 years. Imagine the misery, sadness, and above all else, the sheer tenacity it takes to survive that long. If you can imagine the hell I'm describing, you can, just maybe, imagine my life, the life of a vampire. Oh, I'm sure it's not the life of every vampire, but it is how I see my life. And now suddenly everything I thought was worth living for is gone. My light in a very dark world is dim. And the reason for my existence no longer exists. Perhaps I should start by way of an introduction. My name is Gwendolyn Lee. Gwen for short. I was born in a tiny village called Hayes on the outskirts of London, in England. Over time, Hayes became part of the larger suburbs of London. But when I made my entrance into the world, it was but a small community and more than 3 days' walking distance from the capital. I was born in the early hours one day in early June in the year 1522. I don't know the exact date of my birth. My parents didn't know of it, and so it was obvious that I would never know. My mother would tell me, "You were born on the morn of the sunniest day of the year, Gwen." I loved it when she said these words to me and never questioned her further. And so I now state my birthday to be the first day in June. I became a vampire at the age of 19. At 19 in Tudor England, I'd already lived at least half of my lifespan, and it could no way be termed as a child. Strange when you consider that at age 19, I'm now, in today's world, considered little more than a child. I of course still look 19, and will do until the day I die. I guess it is one of the major benefits of being a vampire. I will never grow old and wrinkly. My breasts will always be upright. I will always look beautiful, and above all else, I guess I will never need plastic surgery. There are many legends and fables surrounding vampires, the strangest of them being that we cannot tolerate the touch or taste of garlic. We can. Nor do we shrivel at the sight of touch of holy water or crucifixes. We can walk during the daylight hours, and there are only two ways in which a vampire can die. The first is by way of piercing through the heart with a wooden stake. You see, wood is everlasting, and a tree can grow for very many centuries. But if you strike a tree in its heart, in the tree's case its root, you will kill it. The root is where the tree is most vulnerable, and so it is with us. In the making of a stake, an everlasting tree would be felled, and so the magic of an eternal growth is broken. It is the breaking of this everlasting growth that does, when thrust into a vampire, break the magic of everlasting youth. A vampire cannot be killed by ripping out the art. It simply reforms, and beheading has the same effect. We cannot be starved of blood. We will simply dry up and shrivel. But as soon as one drop of blood touches our lips, we will be restored. Contrary to common belief, vampires are not evil, ungodly creatures. Our characters remain the same as when we were human, only heightened. So therefore, if a vampire is a killer, it is almost certain that they were a killer when they were human. We are strong and fast. And yes, we do crave blood. After all, blood is our food. But most vampires will not drain a human dry. Most will simply take what they need and move on. The only other way we die is if we choose to do so by our own hand. Only the strongest of vampires can survive for centuries. It is not easy to watch all that you love die and wither. It requires enormous strength of will, and to be able to start again repeatedly. And in truth, it becomes tiring. It is in fact so tiring to watch humans make the same mistakes century after century, because with great age comes great wisdom. But this wisdom cannot be channeled. We cannot intervene, and so it becomes an everlasting, exhausting circle. How do we kill ourselves? Well, it's quite simple, really. We thrust a stake deep into our heart and we die. But in reality, we have already started to die and will have given up on life long before we commit to the final deed of thrusting that stake. It is at this crossroads in my life that you find me. I don't know if I should carry on living or should I end my life? I've lived through so much, loved and lost, watched history in the making, and I'm tired. For the last few years I've lived alone, not seeking or wanting love or friendship. I'm afraid of the pain, and I've arrived at a point in my life when I'm no longer sure that I can face the hell that is living, and somehow death seems to offer the peace that I crave. I made choices many years ago, choices that I've since lived to regret. Choices that meant love was snatched from me, not once, but many times. But someone from the past remained deep within my heart, a being that I loved above all others. That being was the key to my existence. The reason why I lived this torturous life for so long. Now my reason for living is gone, and with this demise, my desire and fight to live has diminished. I've decided, therefore, to write down all of my memories, which I hope will enable me to reach the decision of continuing to live, or ultimately deciding to die. I must make the choice, and to enable me to do this, I must look to the past. And hopefully this will lead me to establish if my life is worth living in the future. Therefore, the long story detailing my life begins.